All right, well, good afternoon and welcome once again to the TrinSoft NAV Business Central Year-End Close webinar. My name is Bobby Haggard. I'm one of the consultants here at TrinSoft. Now, a few housekeeping notes before we get started with the webinar. I went ahead and put all of our phones on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the comments or the chat feature of the webinar of the GoToMeeting tool. We'll be happy to discuss those at the end of the webinar. Secondly, if you would like a copy of the presentation slides, I'll be happy to send that over after the webinar. Just send me a quick email. I'll have my email posted here at the end. Again, just send me a quick email and I'll be happy to send these presentation slides to you at that time. All right, so our agenda is fairly straightforward and I'll cover the following topics. We're going to go with pre-close to-dos, some helpful hints and best practices. Secondly, we'll look at general ledger year-end, which will include how to lock down posting accounts, creating accounting periods, closing accounting periods, and then the consolidation steps. We will go over some payroll year-end, including tax table updates, printing W-2s, and some different options available. And then we'll quickly hit on the accounts payable year-end, around 1099s and a couple other things to consider. Then we will have some time for questions if there are any, and then we will wrap. So one thing to keep in mind with each installation of NAV or Business Central is that it's different and that your configuration may require some additional steps. So please consult with us or your TrinSoft main contact, and we'll be happy to go over any of those close processes with you. What we've prepared here, we would advise you to use more as a high-level checklist than as a general guide for your specific company. So just wanted to kind of put that comment out there for you. All right, before you perform the actual closing routine, there's a few pre-close steps and processes that we encourage clients to perform. First, make sure that all of your invoices, batches, adjustments are entered and posted. Next, make sure that you have performed a quick review of your accounts to ensure that all business sheet and profit and loss accounts are set up appropriately. The last thing you want to have happen is close your year and then see that what you thought was a balance sheet account has been posted to netted and retained earnings, or an account that you thought was a profit and loss account now has a balance forward amount. It's just an easy setup that could be caught in the front end. So much easier to catch that up front than trying to close, reverse the year end, and then update the wrong account and then re-close. Another step that we encourage is to print and save some of your key reports, such as the trial balance, a detailed customer vendor aging for your inventory to general ledger reconciliation, those type of reports. They'll give you a snapshot prior to the close being performed. Finally, we encourage clients to take or save a backup of the database. Load that database backup into a test company and then run through the actual close in the test company to be sure that you iron out any kinks or issues prior to running a close in the live company database. Now, if you're running Business Central in the cloud, we'd encourage you to work with your partner to download a backup version to a local machine to save prior to close. We'd also recommend, if you're running Business Central in the cloud, that you run the close process in the sandbox or the test environment before running it in the live company. All right, so let's now dig into the NAV and Business Central year-end close. Now, when it comes to year-end close, it's important to note that the company, are not required in NAV or Business Central to close the year. However, we at TrinSoft do think it's a regular closing process is a best practice. So when you perform the annual close, this allows for easier operation within the system, and you'll be able to take advantage of the convenient filtering, sorting options provided within the system. Additionally, it's important to note that you do not have to worry about losing details of transactions when you close, because all details are retained even after you close the year. Now, when it's time to close the general ledger, there's a few things to keep in mind. First, it's important to remember that there's not a need or requirement to close the subledger unless you're running inventory. If you're running inventory and you normally run the inventory adjust cost application on a regular basis, then you'll want to be sure to run that process prior to closing the year. Secondly, it's important that you create the new accounting periods before you close the old year. The next step is actually to close the accounting periods. And then there's two areas to keep in mind during the GL close, areas of cash flow and cost management. For these areas, it's important to keep in mind that if you made any changes or updates to dimensions throughout the last year, to double check that those areas are updated as well. For example, if you've added a new account or a range of accounts within the cost management system, you want to make sure that they are allocating properly. In consolidation, close in the subsidiary, export those results, and then import into the holding company, just as you would in a regular month-end close. Again, unless there's been some sort of structural change or a chart of account change or addition to the organization. If any of these changes have occurred, then it's important to double check that these updates have been carried throughout the mapping of the system. Again, with each installation of NAV of Business Central being different, here's just a very quick high-level overview of how to close the general ledger. Again, first double check that you have a backup and ability to restore if needed. If there's any questions in this area, please speak with your TrinSoft consultant. We'd be happy to help with that. Secondly, update the posting date, create the new fiscal year, execute the closing steps, which includes closing the fiscal year, closing the income statement, which generates your year-end closing entries, and then review and post your year-end closing entries. Next, we'll go over the windows and the key fields to know for each of these steps. Now, going forward in these slides, you'll see both a screen print for both NAV and Business Central versions of the windows. The overall process for NAV and Business Central is exactly the same. It's just the windows are laid out a little bit different, so we're trying to help point out where these processes are. All right, so as we previously mentioned, a key time-saving step to take before the close process starts is to be sure you perform a quick review of all of your general ledger accounts and be sure that they are coded properly as either a balance sheet or income statement type account. Catching a simple mistake like this up front can save you a lot of time on the back end. So here's just on the account card where you would look to see how an account is classified as whether it's a balance sheet or an income statement account. Now, within NAV and Business Central, there's a couple of places that a user will need to update dates related to the ability to post within the system. The first is here on the General Ledger Setup window. Now, you will have, I've highlighted in yellow the fields that can be updated to control what dates can and can't post within the system. Any update in this window would affect all users unless they have been granted specific permissions for their posting dates. The second area is to review is the user setup window. This window will take priority over the general setup window that we just reviewed. So it's typical for a client to lock down the posting date on the general setup window and then have a few specific users or key users who have update user date posting access to be able to post back into closed period. So this is where you would update that for those types of users. Now, once the posting ranges are entered, the user will now want to create the new fiscal year within NAV or Business Central. To do this, go to the Accounting Periods window, then select Create Year from the ribbon. This will open the Edit Create Fiscal Year window. Now, once this window, within this window, the user will want to set the starting date, the number of periods, and the length of each period. Once complete, select OK, and this will create your new year. Now, the next step is to close the accounting periods for the current year. Select the Close Year icon from the ribbon. This will generate a window which will appear confirming that the option to close the year. You'll select Yes. Now, once this process is completed, the periods will show closed and date locked to prevent any future entries. Again, unless it's one of these users who have been granted access to enter during those closed periods. Now that the posting dates are secure and the new fiscal year has been created, you're ready to close the income statement. To do this, navigate to the Close Income Statement window, enter the fiscal year that you're closing, select the General Journal template and batch. TrinSoft, we do recommend that you set a template and batch up separately, specifically for year-end close, as a way to segregate your year-end close from your other batches. You then enter a closing document number and retained earnings account. A closing description comes up, and you can change or update that as needed. Now, if you're using dimensions, you'll want to check the dimensions used and make sure they are included in the year-end process. Once you're happy with your selections, then select the OK button. This will then create the required journal entry to clear the income statement and to retain the earnings. Now, if the need arises that you don't have the ability to post a previously closed year, keep in mind to do this, you'll need to rerun the closing task and post additional adjustments. Next, we'll go to the general ledger. You'll find your batch that was created from the prior step. Now, as you can see here in the red highlights, the posting date begins with a C, so we know that those are closing related entries. This is a system generated date There's also a flag behind the scene that identifies these entries as closing related entries. So that's the NAV view. Here's the Business Central view. Very, very similar. The yellow highlight section shows each income statement account and the adjustment made to the account to clear the balance. And then the last line of the entry highlighted in green is a net effect to the retained earnings account. Now, once we confirm that everything looks good, we'll go ahead and select Post from the ribbon. And then once that step is complete, you've completed your NAV year-end close process. All right, let's quickly shift gears from the general ledger close and quickly look at the payroll close. Now, for those clients who are running payroll through NAV or Business Central, you'll first need to make sure that you have the tax table updates, which are released by Serenic. Secondly, a few things to keep in mind with the tax table updates. First, be very careful with the payroll control ID differences. We recommend manual updates on those. Secondly, always use effective dates and add new records. Do not update existing records. Additionally, a few year-end steps to keep in mind during the running of the W-2s. First, be sure that your DHA's account is set up and current. Secondly, we encourage you to run these test reports to be sure that all wage data is complete. Next, keep in mind that W-2s can be printed at any time. And then finally, we would encourage you to test the W-2 process long before they're due. Give yourself plenty of time to test and make updates as needed. Now, two additional comments here around the payroll area. First, when you're setting up employees, it's critical to know their Social Security number up front. Keep this in mind. Secondly, when making adjustments, it's important to consider manual entries in the payroll journal. Keep in mind that you can void and reissue checks if there is a need. And then finally, it's always good to think about and prepare well in advance for the final year in payroll, as the timing and dates of check issuance, etc., can always be a little tricky at year-end, so it's good to give a few moments of thought prior to year-end close. All right, let's quickly hit on a couple of things to keep in mind on the accounts payable close within NAV and Business Central. First, it's important to take key steps during the year so that you're not scrambling at year-end. For example, prior to year-end, review your 1099 vendors and make any updates and changes as needed prior to the final day of the year. Now remember, 1099s can be printed at any time. Now, a few common questions that always come up this time of year. First, if the data is wrong, 1099 data, what do we do? The user does have the ability to make adjustments through the vendor ledger entry window. Secondly, can I reprint 1099? Yes, users have the ability to reprint as needed. Next, why aren't they printing for these vendors? A couple things to keep in mind there. If 1099s aren't printing, we would encourage you first to check the EIN setup. First, check the EIN setup, and then secondly, the 1099 type on the vendor to make sure that the setup is correct. Now, as previously mentioned, it's key to get the vendor set up properly before the first payment is made. This is one of those areas where it's key to set up correctly throughout the year instead of waiting until the end of the year. Now, in the setup of 1099s for the vendor, it's important not to use the code MISC or miscellaneous alone. Users will want to use the miscellaneous code with a specific 2-digit code. One of the more common codes we often use is MISC-07. Now, NAV and Business Central does allow a vendor to have multiple 1099s. However, it's a difficult process to handle. We at TrinSoft have found a better way to handle this issue is to actually set up a separate vendor card for each type of 1099. This just makes reporting that much easier and smoother in the long run. Finally, again, the user does have the ability to make updates or adjustments for 1099 transactions through the vendor ledger entry page. All right, so as I mentioned, the kickoff, this was just a very high-level review of the general closing procedures of NAV. Each installation is different, and each module being used is different per client. So if you have specific questions or concerns, I'll certainly list my email here in just a minute, phone number. Please give us a call or send us an email with any questions. Here is my email and phone number, so if you have any questions about your specific NAV or Business Central setup and how our team, our TrinSoft team can help you, or if any questions around close, 1099, payroll codes, etc., let us know, reach out in advance so that we can do some planning and help you be prepared for the year close when that time comes. Thanks again for your time. Certainly wish each of you the best in closing your year. And if TrinSoft can be of any assistance, please just let us know. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.